back, everyone. Guess what?
What?
It's the big 1-0. It's episode 10. And I actually got my count right because I was reminded before we got on air. This is the 10th one. No more mistakes.
Well, I mean, last time, to be fair, we were recording like
several in a row.
7 episodes at once, it felt like. So.
Yeah, that's true. That's why he was falling asleep over there. Although he'll deny it to the death.
Well, also, it's incredibly warm in this studio
it
all
really
the time.
Is. Like, this is how you feel like when you want to go to sleep and it's winter and you want it to be all warm, so you get in your blankets, but we don't need a blanket. It's called these 4 walls. But anyway, back on topic. Welcome back to, you guys ready? Wait. What? Sports. I missed that. I really did. These past few weeks without that in my life have been hard. But I'm glad we got it back. You missed out. What happened? I said guys. That included you.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Disappointing. Anyway, to my right, as always, is the lovely, amazing researcher extraordinaire, Miss Amy. How are you?
I'm okay, G. How was your vacation?
It was wonderful. I'm back here, though, so I'm excited to be here with you, but that means I have to work and go back to regular life. So,
well, just to explain to everybody, that's why we recorded like 7 shows all at once, was because between my work schedule and Gina being on vacation
for a whole week, I was out of here.
We couldn't record.
No.
For several weeks. So.
But that's because we love you all so much. We didn't want to leave you without. You would have been deprived. You would have been like shaking in the corner. Like, what are we going to do? We can't hear their voices for a whole couple weeks. This is not okay.
Gina might be over-exaggerating just a little bit, but
we
are
not.
Glad that you guys are with us.
And always ready to ring the bell on us at any given moment is Dr. Robinson. I said it right this time.
Hey, what's up, guys? What's going on?
Did you miss us? Turn your mic off before you get in trouble. Turn it off before you get in trouble.
Yeah, I'm going to turn my mic off.
So,
by the way, guys, don't let him fool you. He actually loves the entertainment we provide him.
He absolutely does. His whole day is elevated. He's in such a better mood.
If we had a camera in here, you'd see me shaking my head all the time.
Putting his hand over his face. Rolling his eyes.
God.
The deep sighs.
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah.
All of it.
But it's worth every single one.
There's something that just, warms my heart when I see him just scrub his hands down his face. It means that I have actually achieved my goal for the day.
Yes.
Like he's doing right now.
Exactly.
Exactly.
If we don't get one of those, oh my God, moments out of him, I feel like we haven't done our due diligence.
Oh, now and he's ringing the bell on us. But it's, to be fair,
we
were focusing on him and not what we were supposed to be doing today.
Which he'll be jumping in this one because today is all about, and he's been waiting how many weeks for this episode? Baseball cheats and scandals. And I guess I'm pretty excited about this too.
Yeah, I mean, so cheating in sports is something that we all kind of know happens.
I mean, it's not like it's a big deal or anything.
And we all know that, like, cheating is one of those things where, like, I work as a librarian, okay? I know that kids are going to cheat on summer reading.
Mm-hmm.
Because no matter what you make them do to get their summer reading prize, they are going to cheat.
Yeah.
And they will figure it out, and they'll figure out a way to do it. Some of my coworkers get really upset because, well, those kids didn't even do anything. They got their paper today, and they somehow read 29 books in a day. Well, I'm not going to fault them.
Right.
If they are willing to be creative enough to figure out how to cheat, and, people are like, oh, we should make it more difficult, or back in my day, you used to have to write a summary. Let me tell you.
That's not happening.
Even as a reader, and I participated in summer reading all the time.
Yeah.
Even as a big reader, if I had a library that made me write summaries, which was, like, we only had to write, like, a 2-sentence summary of every book or whatever.
Okay.
Most libraries did that back in the 80s. If I had to do that, even though I read the book and I probably could have written a summary, guess what's on the back of the book?
Oh, that's smart. I never would have thought of that. Knowing me, I would have been, like, struggling and then
Look, guess what's on the inside flap of that hardcover?
Facts. 100% facts. And then all you have to do is read the last chapter to get the very ending.
Well, and you pull, like 3 sentences from that summary on the inside chapter, and you're good, right? And kids were doing that. It doesn't matter what you do.
I can't hate.
People are going to find a way to try to game the system.
Exactly.
Any system you have, and sports is a system. Okay?
And there's a clear advantage to cheating. Like, if there wasn't something to get out of it, people wouldn't do it. They'd be like, not worth the effort to do it.
Right. Which, I just remembered this, so before we get too much further, I did actually want to say, Eli, I have to say I'm sorry to you, and I apologize. And I apologize to listeners because I was wrong about a fact last time.
I knew he was going to turn on his mic.
What?
You should see his
Do
face,
tell.
ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
You should see his face. So, when we were talking about pitchers,
Yes.
okay, that morning on Good Morning America,
Mm-hmm.
they actually had a bunch of Major League Baseball retired pitchers doing something for charity, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I had seen, what was his name? I can't remember his name now, of course, because it was there until the moment I went to go and say it. He was a starting pitcher for us in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
Went to the Yankees for a while. CC Sabathia.
Right.
Okay. I had said something about him possibly being a closer because on Good Morning America that morning, they had his name and he was wearing a Mets uniform, which I was like, when did he play for the Mets? But, he probably just grabbed whichever one fit.
Right.
Let's be honest
That
about
sounds
this.
so cold-blooded, but, I mean,
Let's
it is
be
what it
honest
is.
about this. He's no longer playing, so he probably doesn't have a uniform, so he grabbed whatever they had on the side that fit.
Right.
But it said closing pitcher. And I'm like, oh, he must have become a closer at some point before he retired. And after the show, I went and I looked it up. And you were right, Eli. He had not actually become a closer. He was still a starter. Somebody at Good Morning America messed up and probably had the wrong
Oh, boy.
Graphics.
graphics with
right.
the wrong player.
Yeah, I believe it. So there you go. You got one.
The doctor came through.
No. You just get a tally on your board, okay?
Right.
You know what? Right, there you go.
I'm actually surprised that they don't have an actual scoreboard here in the studio someplace.
Me too. I think you guys are missing out on an opportunity to one-up each other.
Yeah.
You need just a little chalkboard scoreboard over there.
Exactly. The times that Kevin has been right and the times that you have been right, which I'm not going to say that.
Don't.
He'll cut your mic off if you're
He
not
will.
careful.
Yes, I will.
I'm going to be good.
So, anyways, back to the whole gaming the system thing.
Yes.
So,
Ding.
today we're going to talk about, or we're going to start with, some of the normal ways that people cheat.
That's general across the board.
That what the officials are looking for.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you're watching the game, they may even comment about some of these things, depending on if they think some of them might be happening or not.
Now, are these things still, I don't want to say commonplace, but do you still see this happen from time? These things happen from time to time? You guys watch baseball way more regularly than I do.
I haven't watched regularly for a couple of years.
Because of all the
Because
issues getting in on TV.
Right, because it doesn't really come on local TV that often anymore.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, especially in that 90s era, early 2000s, you definitely did hear about it a lot.
Yeah.
Even things not related to PEDs,
Mm-hmm.
corking the bat, sticky substances, they were always looking at whether guys were trying to get unfair advantages.
Okay.
So, and I would, defer to Eli because he's been watching a lot more than I have in the last several years as to whether or not they still bring up instances of the possibility of a bat being corked or, a pitcher using substances they're not supposed to.
Well, yeah, I can comment on that. No, actually, the the game has really been cleaned up. I shouldn't say cleaned up from cheating, because you had that whole scandal with the Houston Astros about
Right.
3 years ago. But as far as corked bats and substances, the MLB is actually keeping a close eye on that. I mean, with Bud Selig not being in charge anymore, you got Rob Manfred. So yeah, I wouldn't say as far as substances or corked bats, they've been pretty good on that.
Okay, so like those are the really old school ways to choose.
Yeah,
Right.
that's why I was like, is that even, because they don't even really use wooden. Do they still use
They still
wooden
use
bats?
wood
Yeah, they
bats,
still
yes.
use wooden bats, and the umpire crew is keeping a close
They
eye
check
on that.
those regularly.
Yes, they check that regularly.
Well, and the thing is that the way that they would get away around it previously with the corked bats was that they could cover up possibly where they drilled out with extra tar. So they use tar on
Pine
the
tar,
handles
yeah.
to get grip.
Okay.
And so maybe if you just like touch your bat a lot more, and because every batter has their own bat, and they have a selection, like they have their own cubby that has like 3 or 4 bats that are their
Yeah.
bat.
Oh, okay.
Because each player has a bat that's made to their specification, their hand size, the
Makes
weight
sense.
that they like to swing with.
Mm-hmm.
They all, there are certain standards
Mm-hmm.
as far as the weight and where the weight is centered on the bat.
Yeah.
But each player, over the years that they've played, by the time they get to the majors, they know
What they want.
and what they need.
Okay.
And then if you get like a hand injury, you may go back to the batting company and ask for something that maybe it's a little bit different. In
Yeah,
the
they'll
handle.
probably modify the bat for you.
Right.
Okay.
So that the handle is easier for you to grip or something like that. Like if you had broke a finger or,
Makes
had
sense.
a hand injury of some sort.
But that's by the manufacturers, nothing you've done to the bat.
Right.
That's all in the manufacturing process, and all of those bats are kept, and the bat boys and the equipment managers all know whose bats are whose and
Right.
where they go and which bats to bring out. and
Such
that
a
type of
science.
stuff.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, actually, when I was in college,
Crazy.
when I did my practicum, I worked
that's
with I worked
right.
with the
Equipment manager.
equipment manager of the baseball team.
Scooter.
Yep, Scoot. Yeah, shout out to Scoot. He actually, told me about like the modifications he does on the bat, and what each player likes as far as their uniform, down to their uniform, to the balls, or
And we
yeah.
can get into more of that because our next show is going to be about the non-player personnel.
Yes.
Yeah, all
So we'll talk
Yeah,
about
you are
like,
the perfect person to
equipment.
have. I forgot he did that for like a whole semester.
Yeah.
I can't say anything. That's between you two.
There's a ghost in here.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we tried to turn on a fan before we came on the air, and we plugged it in, and it wouldn't work. And all of a sudden, it started
This
working.
place is haunted.
Well, it's possible that the motor, it's been over a year since I've used it, so
Maybe.
it's possible that the motor in that fan wasn't working right. But anyways,
Okay, moving
he's
on.
about to ding us.
Well, since we started talking about quarterbacks, perfect place segue. Sometimes our ramblings get us where we need to go. Yeah. So, what is a corked bat? Explain that whole process.
So, as we were talking about, the bats are made by a particular manufacturer.
Is it all the same manufacturer for bats?
I believe so, but I'm not
No,
certain.
not really. I mean, because Nike has, does their bat. Some players like Nike bats.
Oh.
But the most common
still
company,
Louisville.
Louisville Slugger. Yeah.
Okay.
So they're the ones who came up with all the standards.
Got it.
Usually, you don't see the other manufacturers unless you're looking at college and the minor leagues.
Yeah.
Most of the major league players are still playing with Louisville Sluggers.
Okay. Makes sense.
And they're the wooden Louisville Sluggers, and they're made out of particular woods and everything else, okay? And we'll get into a whole equipment show at some point in time. But that head of the bat, so, the shape of the bat, you've got the wider end, and then you've got the narrow end with the pommel for you to hold while you're batting.
Right.
The wider end is the head of the bat.
Okay.
That head of the bat is supposed to be solid wood.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. supposed to be.
Right. I saw that look like what's. It's not always.
So, as we were saying, each player has different weight preferences and things like that, of how they want the bat to weigh and lay out. In fact, when you see them doing their practice swings, you'll often see weights at the end of the head.
Oh.
That's so that they're warmed up enough with a heavier bat
to be able to
really swing their bat.
I wonder how heavy some of those bats get. Sorry, tangent. You know,
we'll figure that out for the equipment show.
Squirrel, continue.
We'll figure that out for the equipment show. But so what they can do and what they've done over the years was find ways to drill out or cut open the bat and take out stuff from the center, and then they stuff it with cork.
Now, what does that do?
So if you think about cork, like on a cork board or in a wine bottle,
right,
it's kind of squishy,
right?
So it's actually kind of rubbery.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Especially if you think about the cork in your wine bottle.
I've drank enough wine. Yes.
It goes in, and they have to actually like squish it to get it to go in.
Right. So it's so hard to
and then
thing out.
It expands to seal the bottle, and then when you get it out, you'll actually sometimes see that it's indented in some areas, and it will eventually fill back out. In fact, nowadays there are manufacturers that use, more of a foamy, rubbery substance instead of actual cork.
But that's allowed?
Yes.
Oh,
okay. As far as wine goes.
Oh, yeah.
For the wine corks. So, if you think about the properties of that cork and how it's kind of springy and rubbery and all of that, think about what that does to the inside of the bat.
Oh.
So instead of being a solid thing that's getting hit,
it's the springy thing.
It's more springy. And so when somebody has way too many home runs, or they're hitting home runs that are way out there, they will sometimes investigate the bat, especially if it's like with a particular bat that they're using.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
because they're watching that much in detail.
They are. And if they are always picking this particular bat for a particular situation and they always hit a home run in that situation, they may investigate that bat.
Red flag.
As Eli has said, it doesn't happen as much nowadays because they've got more precautions beforehand.
Right. The last person that actually had a cork bat was in the 90s, which was Sammy Sosa.
Right.
Ah.
So they thought for a while there that some of the bat splitting issues may have been because of corked bats, but most of them wind up not being. It's just, the wood getting weak.
Okay. Is that from like bats they've been using forever?
Those are from older bats usually.
Okay.
Or they might be, if it gets hit in just the right way,
yeah,
it will.
It's like when you drop your phone just the right way to crack your screen.
Yeah, sort of. Or there might be like a weak spot in the bat.
Yeah.
So if it's a new bat and it happens, it probably means there was a weak spot in the bat
before they started actually using it.
And they are using more and more science to try to avoid that. So when they're getting manufactured, they're getting scanned and all sorts of things to find any weak point.
Oh, I'm going to see if there's like remember that show Here's How? I'm going to see if there's a Here's
or Modern Marvels or something.
Yeah, there's got to be. I'm going to look for it.
When we start talking about the equipment manager in the next show, I will bring up a great hit, I believe it was a Discovery Channel show that talked about some of the equipment.
Ooh.
But
you're resourceful.
Well, it's just because I remember it because I was like, ooh, that's interesting. So that's like the issue with the corked bat.
Okay.
Corked bats were extremely common as far as a way of cheating through to about the 50s or 60s.
Okay.
Corked bats go hand in hand with the sticky substances. As like an old school.
So would they overlap? Will you see somebody with a corked bat and an issue with?
Well, the sticky substances tend to be more something that they're looking at the pitchers for.
Okay. So for bats, you can have something on the handle to help you grip it?
Right. So most guys are using batting gloves now.
Right.
But they in the old days, they would definitely use like tar and stuff to keep their hands on it.
How messy is that?
And then, then you have to try to like wash off the tar.
Yeah.
They still do use pine tar on the bats. some bats you'll see that are wrapped.
Mhm.
It's a little bit easier.
I've seen that. Yeah.
But if you're especially an old school guy, you'll definitely have like some pine tar on there. But that they also use the gloves now,
Right. Right.
so then it doesn't get on their hands for returning to the field or anything like that.
Absolutely.
But it helps with grip on the bat, especially on the hot, sticky, humid days.
Any day in Florida. Any given day in Florida.
Basically. All of those days where it's just getting like, just like when you're bowling or whatever else. If
Yeah.
if you're sweating, you don't have a good grip.
Yeah, something's flying in a way that you don't want it to fly out of your hand, possibly.
And you're either going to wind up with it flying out of your hand, or it's going to slide down in your grip, and
Yeah.
so then you're choked up on the bat more than you want to be, and things like that.
Okay.
So,
Makes perfect sense.
but the sticky substances that are quote illegal
Mm-hmm.
are mainly more for the pitchers.
Okay, so what advantage would they get from using sticky substances?
It makes it easier to hold the ball.
Okay.
So the more grip you can get on the ball, the more velocity you can put on it.
Ah, okay. Gotcha.
Also, some of those grips are really tricky. As we talked about in like the pitcher
Mhm.
one, I don't know if we ever got any pictures up on our social media stuff.
I don't know, but I will. I'm glad you reminded me of
for,
that.
like the knuckle balls and the curve
Sorry,
ball,
guys. Yeah.
hands, so that you could see like how the fingers are positioned, because some of those positions you're just like, can a human actually put their hand in that position?
Listen, was it the knuckleball one? I forgot. I was looking at them like when I got home that same day, and I was like, do you have to dislocate your fingers, it feels like, to be able to get your hand in some of those positions?
Well, and I'm like, and I look at it with my hand, and I know my hand is small.
Right.
I have longer fingers, smaller hand.
Like palm.
My dad was a pianist and had like the really long, what my mom called spider fingers.
Oh, so he was
And
just
so
like,
I have that too, but it doesn't make it great for holding a ball in your hand,
yeah.
because you don't have as much surface area in your palm.
Mm-hmm.
So I know most pitchers have slightly larger palm areas on their hands, and so like they've got a lot of grip in the middle of their hand, and so they can manipulate their fingers around the ball a little bit more. But still,
Right.
yeah, there are grips where you're like, and there are grips you can't recreate unless you actually have a ball in
your hand.
But those grips sometimes are hard to do if you are sweaty at all. And as we talked about before, they can have like a resin bag, just like you would have a rosin bag,
When you bowl.
when you bowl or when you're weightlifting,
Yeah.
or like the gymnasts have
The powder.
that tray of powder next to the gymnast doing the
uneven bar.
uneven bars and stuff.
Yeah.
Or the vault or whatever. That's rosin.
Oh, okay.
That's
I just thought it was chalk.
Powdered form of rosin. Well, rosin is a chalk.
Oh, okay. So it's
So,
kind of
yeah.
the same thing.
It's just a really thick chalk that absorbs a lot more moisture.
Okay.
And so you can have that as a pitcher to like dry off your hands on those hot, sticky days.
Okay. That's fair. Yeah.
But you can't have something that's going to enhance your grip.
Got it.
A lot of times they'll be watching, and this is probably why they get caught. The last guy I saw that tried to do this, he had put some of the pine tar from the bats on top of his hat, and he would go like this between pitches. And by this, I'm like showing Gina, but he would
pinch
touch
the brim
top
of his
hat.
yeah.
He would pinch the brim of his hat a little bit and get some of the substance on his fingers. And
I bet he thought it was slick because it looked like he was just fixing his hat or touching his hat.
and honestly, they didn't catch him I mean, he was probably doing it for a really long time, and they didn't catch him.
Yeah.
But
because it could have just been like, how they have rituals before they get
right,
ready to pitch.
because a lot of guys, have certain things they do between every pitch as a set.
Mm-hmm.
And as they're getting set, they do all these particular moves, and then they stand there and they stare down their catcher and
right.
So I think Eli had said there was another one that had gotten caught with it on the back of his neck. Is that correct, Eli?
Let me see. Yeah, actually, yes.
Who was it? Do you remember?
I think he played for the Kansas City Royals.
On the back of his neck.
Yeah, so he had just put a little bit of a sticky substance right above his uniform
How
collar.
clever are people when they want to be clever? Because I would have never thought, like, that's such a weird place to put it. But it looks like he's just reaching for the back of his neck to scratch or whatever. I wonder how long he went before he got busted.
Let me research that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Producer.
I mean, you know, he throws these things out, and then when I ask him about them, he's like, "Oh, I don't know."
Ill prepared. And the sad part is I told him we were doing this today.
So those are, you know, the traditional ways of cheating, the most traditional ways of cheating.
Yeah.
It was Justin Turner.
Justin Turner.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Los Angeles Dodgers.
Okay. And that was what year?
Was that recent?
2020.
Oh,
2020.
shoot. Really?
So, as you can see, the sticky substances are a little bit more
Recent.
happening, probably because they're a little bit easier to do.
Yeah.
Your bat is getting checked by multiple people.
Right.
Back in the 90s, they didn't have as many people checking the bats.
Okay.
And if you were a big enough star, you could say, I don't want anybody but me touching my bats.
Yeah. You're going to
Like,
break
if you're
my...
a Sammy Sosa, if you were, you know, a Mark
Albert
McGwire,
Bell.
an Albert Bell, you could sit there and go, nobody's touching my bats but me.
Right.
Okay? Some of those guys nobody would argue with.
Yeah.
I mean, you're Sammy Sosa. Okay,
Who
that's
am
fine.
I? Whatever you say, sir.
Because, you know, to quote a major league reference here, the movies, you know, a lot of times baseball players are very superstitious.
Yes, they are.
Extremely superstitious. All a guy has to do is claim that somebody will put bad juju on his stuff, and everybody's like, hands off of it.
Right.
Because you don't want to be the one that's accidentally putting bad juju on.
And now he can't
Sammy
get home
Sosa's
runs.
butt.
Right.
Right. You don't want to accidentally be putting bad juju on Sammy Sosa's bat or whatever. So, you know, the funny thing is that along with the corked bats being a bigger issue, you know, 90s era and early 2000s than they are now.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that was a really big issue back then that we don't see as much of, and whether it's not a problem
Or they just don't talk about it.
or, well, not just that they don't talk about it, or they're better at hiding it, they're not getting caught as often, are the PEDs.
True.
Which, for those of you who don't know the acronyms, it's performance enhancing drugs.
There's always at least one acronym every time we do a show. I've
Okay.
noticed that.
And performance enhancing drugs have changed over the years,
Yeah.
which is why I say whether it's that they're not there or they're just not getting caught, that's a whole different set of things.
Yeah.
Because it's not just steroids anymore.
And it used to just be like that was the one.
And there were particular, like, back in the 60s, you were literally getting human harvested testosterone
Ugh.
or pig
Testosterone.
And then by the 70s and 80s, it was artificial and it was widespread. You could get it anywhere.
Right.
I mean, you had local high school kids taking the stuff, right?
Crazy.
And in the 90s era is when steroid use and some of the newer versions that were harder to detect
Yeah.
became a really big issue. Now, I don't know how much baseball was deciding to test before 90s era ball,
Yeah.
because I don't think they had a reason. And 90s era ball was exciting, and then all of a sudden in the late 90s, they were like, but we're fairly certain that all those guys were using drugs.
Okay, so let's backtrack a little bit. Your face right there, Dr. Eli. He was like, yeah, kind of. That was the... We can't say yes or no definitively, but...
Well, because they didn't test as often, they didn't test as much, and they didn't put as much information out there. And like I said, a lot of these guys were paying big money to companies, the ones that have been caught or the ones who have admitted to it. We're paying lots of money to doctors and companies
to keep it on the hush, too.
to get them undetectable.
Yeah.
Whether that meant finding ways to, quote, cleanse their body before testing.
Like a detox kind of deal.
Or whether it was buying clean pee off the market.
Mm-hmm.
Or using some of the new designer things that weren't getting popped in tests yet.
Because they just weren't as well known yet.
Because they hadn't been seen.
Yeah.
Nobody knew that they had actually been made.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. So that's why I said, we all sat through watching these 90 era guys, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, and that incredible home run race.
Yeah.
And
and
we went, wow, this is amazing. This is so cool. I mean, it's kind of like watching 90s era football, and you're like, these guys are willing to kill themselves for the game, and it was like so exciting and over the top.
Yeah.
But then after a while, people went, wait,
this isn't normal.
This isn't right. There's something fishy about all of this.
So, okay, that leads me back to my question before I let us go off on a tangent because I went into another direction anyway. What was the red flag that made people go, Was it the sheer number of home runs that were happening?
Yes.
Or
the numbers, the length of the home runs,
like how far out they
the
were getting
amount
them?
Because
the fly time on them was so short.
Yep.
So, like, if you can hit from home base over the center wall and, like, halfway through the parking lot.
Right.
And it only takes 3.5 seconds for it to get there.
Oh, so it's fast and it's far. Oh, okay.
So, the big one was, everybody started... The one that I remember, because this is when I was, like, really big into baseball. Cleveland didn't have a football team at the time in the first part of it. And we were watching and we're like, Mark McGwire certainly got really big in the last year and a half.
Yeah.
He like literally he went from being like normal human size to like Hulk Hogan.
She said normal human size.
Well, I mean, he looked like Joe Schmo off the street.
Right. Like,
I mean, a little better built than Joe Schmo, but
he wasn't like this like cock diesel dude.
He didn't look like a WWE wrestler, okay? He didn't look like Triple H. He didn't look like Hulk Hogan.
Right.
And all of a sudden,
boom,
he was, like, massive.
I remember seeing him in those jerseys that was like they painted that on him before they went out there.
Because they didn't resize his jersey. Like...
That's crazy.
He didn't, like, grow in the chest, but his arms were, like...
And his shoulders, like...
And you're sitting there going... And now, I didn't know then what I know now because I became a personal trainer, later in life.
Right.
And I wasn't really into physical fitness at that point in my life. But he looked a little bit more like what we would have called almost prison fit.
Oh.
Compared to, just regular baseball player fit.
Mm-hmm.
And he, like, his arms got jacked, although his legs also got jacked.
Interesting.
So, but, like, his... torso wasn't as ripped, but his arms were massive and his legs were... I mean, it's like he had the legs of The Rock on him.
Crazy.
And you're
in a year's time.
Yeah, in a year's time. You're like, wait, what happened to Mark McGwire over the off season?
Is he okay?
And then, the year that they had the home run race
excuse me.
was crazy because, like, you had him and then you had Sammy Sosa, who also, his legs were jacked. Like, I'm sorry, Eli. He had the backside of a running back.
Yeah.
And that's not ever something you see in baseball, for real.
Not even on your most gifted of ethnic players.
Right.
Okay?
That was such a PC way to say that. I saw you searching for the right words.
But you just don't. I mean...
Right.
A-Rod wasn't built that way.
Nope.
None of
Derek
them.
Jeter.
No. I mean, and A-Rod got caught, but he wasn't caught using the traditional steroids.
Mm-hmm.
Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, I have a feeling, were more traditional steroids.
Like the injecting.
Well, and the way that it worked for them was that they were just jacked up all over the place. So they probably were hitting the weight room and had somebody from the gym say, hey, this will help you out.
Mm-hmm.
And then just trained the specific muscles they need for the thing that they were doing. Okay. But yes, a baseball player, even the pitchers that use a lot of their gluteus and a lot of their back muscles, do not have the backside of a running back.
Right. That's just not normal for that particular kind of sport.
No. And so, like, you're sitting there watching Sammy and you're like, there's something off about the way he looks.
Yeah.
Now, there were players for that era or leading up to that era. Then also, Jose Canseco and can't remember the other one. And I know Dr. Robinson's about to come in.
That'll be Rafael Palmeiro of the Orioles.
Yes.
Who else was using?
There were a number of them in the early 90s leading up to that end of 90s era baseball.
When it got really,
where it
like,
got really big. Because
sensationalized.
Jose was great
Yeah.
in the beginning of his career. And he started using because he was falling off.
Right.
He wasn't like Mark McGwire, who was still in the beginning of his career and came back like...
I mean, Mark McGwire in the 1998 season hit 62 home runs to break Roger Maris's record.
In a single season?
In a single season.
The single season record is over 75 if you include that race.
Right.
So the Sammy Sosa Mark McGwire race was in what, 99 or 2000?
No, 98.
98?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that season, they got over 70 home runs.
Yeah.
I wonder what the average was. Like, who was, I'm going to look that up. Who was the next highest person?
In the 1998 season?
Yeah.
I'll look that up.
Because I'm just curious, like, what was the disparity that was like, there's no way you two single
and
people.
the thing is that, like, it didn't dawn on people until, like, a year or two later.
That's not right.
Because they did that race for a year, and then the next year, things calmed down.
So
and
did they not perform the same the next year?
My guess is that somebody's doctor was like, dude, something's happening to your liver.
Yeah.
Or,
there had to be something.
We don't know, but...
So in 1998, you had number 1 was Mark McGwire. Number 2 was Sammy Sosa. Number 3 was Ken Griffey Jr.
Okay. Where was he at number 3 in comparison? Just out of curiosity.
56.
And they had what?
Sammy Sosa had 66. Mark McGwire had 70. Number 4 was Greg Vaughn of the San Diego Padres. Number 5 was Albert Bell.
Where was he?
49.
So
wow.
you can see that there was like a 20 home run difference.
Right. That's a significant.
Number 8 was Manny Ramirez with 45.
So that sounds like it would be normal, like a 40-ish,
Usually,
30-ish.
yes, somewhere in the 40s. Like the before the race, I believe the high 50s was the
like the echelon.
Yeah,
Right,
was
right,
the record.
Right. Okay.
So it was like high 50s, like maybe 60, 61.
So they just blew it out the water.
Yeah, they completely blew it out of the water. That's why it became such a huge thing.
Well, number 18 was Barry Bonds with 37.
Wow.
And so that's why I'm saying, like,
Thank you.
And as we said, the other thing was that, like, Jose Canseco had been caught a few years earlier, but in the early 90s and the late 80s when he came out, like, his rookie card is such a big deal because he was so good in his rookie year.
Yeah.
He was an incredible player for years, and he started sliding off, and then he came back, and people were like,
how'd you get so good again?
right. And, it comes out that, he was using.
Juicing.
And yes, actually, and that, I believe, is the title of his biography. And so, it didn't dawn on people until later because the fact that Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire were younger and earlier in their career, most people thought of PEDs as something that old athletes use in order to keep up with the younger guys.
Yeah, so that they don't
so they can elongate so they
their
can
career.
Continue their career.
Okay.
So the testing got a lot more stringent.
Mm-hmm.
And then we wind up with A-Rod.
So, okay, quickly before we go on to the next thing, what was that whole situation?
So A-Rod was using a combination of things between human growth hormone, which is...
Because I remember hearing that being a big thing.
Similar to steroids, but is not actually male testosterone.
Okay.
It is your body produces hormones throughout your life.
Mm-hmm.
When you're younger, it produces more of them to tell your body to grow because...
Right.
Babies have the most human growth hormone ever.
Right, because their whole body needs to grow.
And do it quickly.
Exactly.
Relatively, because by the time, you're 17, 18, maybe 24, you are as big as you're going to get.
Pretty much done. Right.
Unless you're somebody like Andre the Giant or some of these people with giantism who have pituitary issues that keep them growing. That's where human growth hormone comes in. It is part of the pituitary gland.
Okay.
And rather than being steroids, which is just the male sex hormone that allows them to put on more muscle mass,
Right.
human growth hormones partly function to give you more height and everything else. So if you're younger and you have growth issues, they may give it to you to help you grow taller.
Okay.
When you're using it as an athlete, they've taken particular parts of these hormones that target particular parts of your body
To help those grow.
mental, and so like some will help your nerves, some help your skin. So like you'll
Interesting.
see commercials on TV.
Yeah,
for
I've
it
seen them.
to help you lose weight. If you're, are you a woman over a certain age?
Yeah, I've seen those commercials.
Right. And so they help you lose weight and put on muscle mass, but not in the same way that
Right.
steroids do, and they're harder to test for.
Okay.
Because your naturally occurring levels of these hormones will fluctuate.
So if you have a higher, just a little bit higher level than what the standard would be, it wouldn't be raise a red flag in the same way.
Right.
Okay. Versus like, oh, you got like a gigantic spike in testosterone.
Right.
That's not
And then
normal.
the other thing he was doing was the same thing that Lance Armstrong was doing.
Oh.
Blood doping.
Interesting.
So for years, Lance Armstrong said that he just naturally had these higher occurring levels of red blood cells.
Yeah, so that's how he
Okay.
had such great endurance.
Right. Now, he may have, but at some point in his career, he started adding blood to his blood.
Mm-hmm.
So he was also, A-Rod was also doing...
He had like a cocktail of stuff going
right.
on.
And I should actually be saying supposedly for most of this, because I don't think he's actually admitted to most of it.
Just the human hormone.
I think he back in the day when he got busted for it, I think he specified that it was for chronic back pain and other type of chronic.
So he tried to put a medical reason for it.
Right.
Okay.
And he never admitted to some of the other things that his doctors got busted for doing for
Right,
him.
right.
Okay.
So his doctors have said, this is what we did. And he's like, no, they didn't.
What are you talking about?
So,
Liar.
And I mean, not just batters were busted for PED use. Kurt Schilling got busted, and Roger Clemens got busted as
right.
well.
So the pitchers were also juicy.
Oh, that makes sense.
The batters were the ones that most people remember.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's the showier thing. But
Exactly,
yes, Roger
exactly.
Clemens, he did get busted because when you're routinely throwing over 100 and some miles per hour for a fastball and you are 45 years old.
Yeah.
Right. Like sometimes you just have to go
And you've
cheat
had
smart.
and you've had shoulder surgery. There's no way.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, cheats. If you're going to cheat, at least be good at it.
Smart. something.
Smart. Yeah, something.
So, that's where kind of we are at this point, is that when
Okay.
they're going to get caught, they're going to get caught doing something that's not the obvious.
And then that point
PEDs.
too, it's kind of like we've never run into it. So how do we?
And they're getting smarter about it.
Yeah.
But, the question is, I think baseball has gotten harder and cracking down harder on that front
Oh yeah.
than they used to.
Absolutely.
And they actually test more like they would if these guys were all going to the Olympics. Compared to back in the day, they just,
I'm sure
whatever.
that's going to probably become more of a standard across the board,
Right.
for
I know.
every
It has.
sport.
Right.
Yeah.
I actually know a Cleveland Indians player by the name of Marlon Byrd. He played for us about 5 years ago. He got busted for PED use and got suspended for 80 games.
Because I was going to ask, is the big penalty or the big consequence being suspended for games?
It is.
Yes.
You don't ever get kicked out of baseball for that, do you?
You can. You
Yeah, you
can.
can.
If it's shown that you chronically
Multiple
do
offen-
it,
yeah,
multiple
multiple offenses.
offenses.
Oh, you got busted once and you got busted again.
Right. If you get busted several times.
Got it.
And several times across different teams, and depending on what it is that you're actually doing. And, if you can prove that you were on a medical, you have a medical reason for it.
Right.
Or you didn't realize that the medicine that they were giving you was going to have these effects. You may get away with it, but even that's getting harder and harder to do.
Yeah. It's too much information available, especially if it's coming from your doctor. But
Right. So
Good to know. Okay.
now that we've covered that, and I totally forgot about the Astros cheating scandal when we were going over all these things. So we'll probably come back and hit up another show about the scandals, because there's lots of scandals. But the one that came to my mind as the biggest scandal in baseball history is one that is in popular culture, and we may not even know it. You may not even know it. A lot of people may not know what these references are to, but they remember the references.
And they know them when they hear them. Because I know them when I hear them.
So I was saying to you just before the show, do you remember the Bugs Bunny cartoon? I believe it was one where they were doing a baseball-themed thing, but I don't remember. There were several of them, I actually think, where there was a small character that would come up to one of the main characters.
Yeah.
And be like, say it ain't so, Joe. Just say it ain't so. And that's something that you see. I mean, I remember it being in several different things when I was a kid that I watched. And granted, I was raised on really old movies and things.
Right.
So, it's not unusual for me to have seen them. But I feel like everybody in our generation has at least seen most of the Bugs Bunny cartoons.
Absolutely.
Or most of the Looney Tunes cartoons. And if not, they're readily available for you to find streaming.
YouTube.
But that whole thing is actually a reference back to one of the biggest scandals in baseball history. And that is the Black Sox scandal involving Shoeless Joe Jackson, which is also a name that most people know, but they don't know why they know it.
Exactly. I feel like there's a lot of that. Like, I know it, but I don't know why I know it.
So I'm going to start with who Shoeless Joe Jackson was. And for whatever reason, I'm tripping over his name today. But
Shoeless
Joe Jackson.
We're just going to have to say it slow. There's a reason why I haven't tried it. Been real quiet.
So the big one on this is the tie-in to Field of Dreams, which we still haven't sat down to watch.
No.
I can't believe you've never watched it. Eli, you have watched it, right?
Yes.
Okay. Again, it's one of the better movies that show the realities of baseball
And depict
in a
it
way,
accurately, right?
as
More
far as
accurately.
depicting the game.
Okay.
But the whole story of it is just actually about this farming family. But he goes out and he hears this whisper saying, "If you build it, they will come."
I know that reference.
Okay. The they were talking about was the 1919 White Sox team and Shoeless Joe Jackson. Now, when you're watching the movie, you may be like, but wait, the way I remember the movie, the uniforms were pinstriped. The old White Sox uniforms were pinstriped. So, like, in my head, I was like, wait, I didn't realize that was the White Sox because they're wearing pinstripes, and pinstripes means the Yankees.
Yeah, exactly.
But it actually was their old uniforms. If you watch some of the throwback uniform games, they might have their pinstripes on. Pinstripes were a lot more common back in the early 1900s.
Before it became like a Yankee staple.
Right. Yankees held on to it. Everybody else kind of gave up their pinstripes.
Yeah.
And Yankees were like, no, we're holding on to it. So the reason it's called the Black Sox scandal is because it left a black mark on the White Sox.
A black stain.
Yes. So
Why all the bad stuff gotta be black? I'm sorry. I had to do it.
Joe Jackson was one of the most famous players of the early 1900s. He still holds records in Cleveland and Chicago.
Oh, so he played here?
Yes, he played for the Cleveland Naps.
The what the?
Before the Cleveland Indians were the Indians, they were the Cleveland Naps.
What the heck is a nap? Like to go to sleep?
Naps.
Oh, I was like...
I don't know how to say this because,
curly cues, whatever you want to call it. Okay. I was like, what the hell is a nap? Okay. I'm on track. I'm back on board.
I'm hoping most of our listeners either know already or will look up what that was in reference to. Unfortunately, it is a darker chapter. If you think Cleveland Indians
is racist,
the Cleveland Naps were even more so.
That's crazy. I didn't even know we were ever called by that name.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
And the truthfully, the Cleveland Indians, the name came around because of a player we had that was Native American.
I learned that
to
not too long
honor
ago.
to
Yeah.
honor him. But yes, now it's the Guardians. Yes, I know Eli. He starts moving his mic around, and I know he's got something he wants to say. So he actually, Joe Jackson still holds records in Cleveland and Chicago
Okay.
for having the most triples in a season.
I was going to ask, but I'm not going to because we're trying to stay on topic. That's another day.
What a triple is.
Yes.
It means that you've hit the ball and you've made it to third base without any of the players in the outfield making an error.
Oh.
So there's singles, doubles, triples,
Oh. Yeah, I had no idea.
and
No
then a home
idea.
run. So, in matter of fact, I read this on Wikipedia. I did not know this until I was researching. So Joe Jackson would have been playing ball at the time that Babe Ruth was a child.
Wow.
Babe Ruth was a famous player of the 30s and 40s,
Merry Christmas.
and Joe Jackson played in 1910.
Wow.
Okay. Babe Ruth is said to have based his stance. He said that he based his stance and his swing on shoeless Joe Jackson.
Wow.
Okay. So the say it ain't so part comes around because eventually in 1921, Joe admitted to a grand jury that he was part of the scandal. And a Chicago paperman put in the headlines, say it ain't so, Joe. And then somebody started telling a story that he got that headline because there was a small child who was waiting outside the courtroom. There were all these kids waiting outside the courtroom for Shoeless Joe. And a small child ran up to him, pulled on his sleeve, and said, "Say it ain't so, Joe. Say it ain't so."
Oh, that's so tear-jerking.
And shortly before Joe passed away, he did say that never actually happened.
Okay.
That, it's one of those things where it became an urban legend,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
But that's where that's from.
Interesting.
So now to the scandal, the actual scandal itself. There was no gambling rule in baseball at the time.
Okay.
This is actually how the gambling rule came along. Gambling was extremely common in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
And most of the time you were just going to your local neighborhood bookie. Most of those bookies in the bigger cities like Chicago and New York were, surprise, surprise, run by the mob.
Oh, get out of here. The mob doing something illegal?
Right. So guys could bet on anything that they wanted to.
So even the players could be like, I'm putting some money down on this bad boy.
Right. Players were betting, and there were no restrictions on what kind of bets. And unfortunately, there were a lot of players on the White Sox team who got into some financial trouble with their betting.
Mm-hmm.
It's conjecture as to whether they were actually betting on their own games or not.
Yeah.
But by the time they got to the World Series, 1919 World Series, by the way, it was the Chicago White Sox versus the Cincinnati Reds. The bookies were wanting their money.
Oh.
And they were making deals with the players that owed them money to throw the game, to throw the series.
And that will repay their debt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Problem is, there weren't quite enough of them on the team to actually make sure it happened. So then they started recruiting other players.
So not enough players actually owed money for them by themselves to be able to influence the game. Got it.
So they went and started recruiting other players. So what Joe actually admitted to was that he was on the take. He had taken $5,000 in order to allow the Red Sox, or the Red Stockings is what they were actually at the time. They were the Cincinnati Red Stockings.
I'm so glad they're not.
Because the Red Sox in Boston were separate. So the Boston's were already Red Sox, and then there were the Red Stockings.
Oh my gosh. And now they're just the Reds.
And now they're just the Reds.
Good call.
So he had said that he'd taken the money to allow the Reds to have more triples when they hit to his area of the field. He played left field.
Okay.
So he did not do it actually in an obvious way.
Mm-hmm.
If it had not come out from other players that he was on the take,
Nobody
he
would
may
have
not
known.
have gotten any adverse effects from it. Because what he would do is not run as fast towards the ball.
Ah, got it. Okay.
And so they actually, except for the fact that statistically they had more triples when hitting to that side of the field, nobody would have known. Also, the hitters were aiming for that side of the field. Are we getting close to time already, Eli?
Wow. Really?
Okay. So I'm going to go through this a little bit quickly.
Okay.
Okay. So just to let you guys know, $5,000 in 1919 would have been the equivalent of $78,000
Holy
today.
crap.
And the article I got that from was written in 2019, which means that as of right now, it's probably $85,000 to $90,000.
I can't say I would have turned that money down. And I don't, and I'm not the one who owes.
Right. Well, and not only that, but baseball players at the time weren't paid $1 million contracts.
So even more reason to be like, sure.
Right. So this is how we got our gambling rule.
Okay.
And next time we do scandals, we'll go into Pete Rose and why it was such a big deal for him and what happened to him, because all of that is based on Shoeless Joe Jackson.
And you know what the funny part is about Pete Rose, real quick? Only reason I know who that is because of wrestling. It's the only reason I know who Pete Rose is. If it wasn't for that, I'd have no clue.
Some kids only know him from the commercials.
Good God
so
Almighty.
I mean, I'm being honest.
there are kids that only know him from the commercials and don't really know what he's about. But we'll get into that next time. We'll pick up with the end of Shoeless Joe and then talk about Pete Rose.
To be continued, because this is quite the saga.
Yes. So it is a interesting thing to be getting into. So not the next show, but the next one we do on cheats and scandals.
Yeah.
Which we won't wait too long to do.
No, we'll keep it somewhat close in.
So we want to thank you guys for listening to us today. I hope that we've taught you something, and I hope that we've entertained you in some way.
Hey, we taught Dr. Eli over there because he sat there like arms crossed, like nodding his head, like.
See, I was looking at you this whole time because
I only caught it out the corner of my eye, but I saw the arms crossed, and okay.
So, if you guys want, you can reach out to us. Let us know how you think we're doing.
What questions do you still have? What other scandals do you think we should talk about that we didn't get? Because like Amy said, there's tons of other ones, but these are the ones that are the most obvious that you've heard about. Even in just passing, you've heard about it, I'm sure.
Right. So we are at...
Oh, I get to do the rundown?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember the rundown. You've got it all written
I've got it memorized. Okay, so I'm going to start with the hard one. Instagram is wait_what_sports. Twitter, WW22 Sports. At Facebook is Wait What Sports. You can listen to it on Spotify, Facebook Podcast for Now. Apparently that's going away, which makes me sad.
Yeah, we got an email a couple weeks ago that only through the 1st of June is Facebook podcasts going to continue. So you won't be able to click and listen to us directly on Facebook, but we will make sure to get the links put up every week so that you can click and listen to us through Spotify.
Right. Or if you have Podbean or Mixler, there'll still be a way for you not to go without your Amy, Gina, Dr. Eli fix. We would never abandon you like that.
Ever. Also, Gmail us.
Yes. www.sports22@gmail. Questions, and we're still wanting suggestions on movies that you guys think we should watch. Send us your baseball movie suggestions. We already know Field of Dreams. We're going to rewatch Major League because all of us in this room have watched that movie.
And Bull Durham.
Yes. I forgot all about that movie, honestly. Don't look at me like that.
I can't forget about it. It's my mama's favorite.
See?
So
But
my
other
mom
ones?
had a huge crush on Kevin Costner when I was a kid. So
I feel like he was like the heartthrob back then, probably for real.
It was Tom Cruise and Kevin Costner, and I don't know why. I would have done Tim Robbins myself personally. But,
To each his own.
Yeah,
But
Eli's
anyway,
about to ding us again, so we're going to have to leave.